Hi, everybody. This is Tara Bradley with The Growth State, and I'm really excited about our guest today. Her name is Beate Chellette, and she is going to share some amazing tips with us to tell you a little bit about her and why I'm excited. She is the growth architect. So, what better platform for her to be on? She's the founder of the Women's Code, a first generation immigrant who at one point found herself $135,000 in debt as a single parent. She bootstrapped her first business that she kind of built off of her passion for photography and eventually sold that to Bill Gates in a multi-million dollar deal. So that's really, the rags to riches story that we all hope to have. So I'm excited to hear more about that. As a strategic advisor to organizations and startups to Fortune 100 global brands, Beate helps organizations to grow through her five-star success blueprint methodology, which she's going to talk to us a little bit about today. She's developed customized programs that position diverse leaders for success and global business objectives. So thank you so much for joining us today, Beate.
Thank you so much, Tara, for having me. I'm excited to be here and share with your wonderful summit and all the people that you aim to inspire and impact to grow and scale their businesses and become better leaders.
Great. Well, I start all of these interviews with the same question, and reading your bio and sharing that with everybody, I know that you have a story that you can tell us. And, I find that those like yourself who participate in thought leadership and growth and have been there and done that, there's a point in their career where they had a pain point where they're like, I've got this figured out. I can do it better and I can help other people do it. And I'd love for you to share what that was for you that really inspired you to go out and help others.
Yeah, so for me, my story, as you said, is really the rags to riches story. It's like the unruly woman that did not want to be the secretary, but the boss, basically. And then left my native Germany and moved to America to find my own American dream, only to encounter that it isn't as easy as it reads in the instruction manuals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Get on a plane, fly to America, find your fortune. And so I jokingly say, I'm an 8-time disaster survivor. So on whether that's fires, floods, earthquake, 9/11, and tsunami, now a pandemic, I riots now twice. So I got it all covered in my tool belt. And so you're absolutely correct, because the it's always darkest before dawn applies to business success very much so. So my defining moment was I was in the middle of a lawsuit against an employee who got too close to my key vendor, and they came up with a great idea to run a business, which was my business just without me. My invoices were being paid to them. And so I sued them because, after all, I'm German, and, if you're German, you have to be right.
Right.
At least at that time, I thought that. And so I'm in this huge lawsuit, and I'm so deep in debt, and it's just a tragedy on how much money it takes to be right, actually, even when you are right.
Right.
And then I had a production business at the same time, and my books were filled with jobs for the next 6 months. And I'm like, I'm just going to make it. I mean, I lost this portion of the business, but I still have this other portion of the business. And then September 11th comes. And within a few hours with the towers went my entire production business, only to, I was unable to rebuild it because nobody
Mm-hmm.
was going on another plane to fly here. And so I decided I was going to fly to Germany to visit my dad. At that time I had this new idea about the stock photography syndication and drum up some business. And then my dad has a stroke, but my dad didn't have a stroke. My father had pancreatic cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And so within 6 weeks in all of this, I have to deal with my father's death. So I'm in Germany. I'm in this beautiful town in Nether Bavaria on this gorgeous overlook on this hill with this 14th century church overlooking the whole valley. And we literally just had put my father in the ground, and my phone rings, and it's my office in Los Angeles telling me that we've been served a notice. So now I was losing the house on top of everything. And so in these defining moments, I fell down to my knees, and I took my fist and I raised it to God, and I yelled at God, and I said, if you have a plan, this would be an excellent time
Yeah.
to fill me in. to
Right.
what that plan exactly is.
Hmm.
And and then you have to kind of let it go because you just don't know what you need to do. And a few months later, I got a letter from the White House. And the story of this House letter is really interesting because I wrote a letter to the President of the United States, George W. Bush then, because my former mother-in-law just wouldn't, and forgive me for saying it as it is, shut up about it. She says, he's your president. Why didn't you write a letter? He wants to hear from you. And so I write a letter just to make her not talk about it anymore. And I get a letter from the White House. And that put me in touch with the Small Business Administration, with a deputy chief director, not some low level loan officer, but with the boss.
Yeah.
And they were able within a couple months to find me a bank that was restructuring my debt at that point, over $130,000, and free up my line of credit. 3 months later, I'm break even. And 18 months later, I'm the world leader in celebrity at home stories. And that is what attracted the Bill Gates company. And they made me an offer too good to refuse. So from the defining moment, from the worst moment of my life to the best moment of my life, it's 18 months. Talk about a quantum leap.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Well, we're excited to learn from your pain and growth through that. I'm definitely excited to hear more about that. And so, a little bit about our platform and the audience we have is really, growing from that person who was willing to take the leap and say, I don't know where this is going to take me, but I'm going to try something. They now got a little bit of momentum, and now it's really growing into strategy, right? They need to grow and move into strategy. And I know that that's a transition you've probably been through a couple of times. So I'd love for you to share with us your thoughts on that. And I know you've got a system for that as well.
Yes, I do. So let me just start with sort of something that typically happens at the beginning or the initiation of a typical growth spurt in a business. Is the business is not growing, right? Or you hit that plateau and you kind of go like, I don't know what I need to do to break this through. Then there is the issue of the business idea gets a little bit diluted because oftentimes the business owner then goes like, well, if I make money with this, I can make money with that. Or what if we serve this person? Or they listen to 10,000 different advisors and they're all telling them something different. And then suddenly the message gets really confusing. Or they have initiatives in the business with however large or small their team is, and it's not aligned with their impact statement, vision, mission, or core values, right? So if the business is not congruent energetically, it cannot work. Or there's a conflict between partners, co-founders, co-creators, and oftentimes what happens is that the responsibilities are not clearly defined. So people that are in the business start watching each other, and instead of doing their own thing and being clear about what that is, they start managing each other, which is a complete utter waste of time,
Right.
right? So that needs to be defined. Or there is like what we've seen in a pandemic and in any disaster really, there's a need for the now infamous pivot, for how do we change the business, how do we adjust it, how do we respond to what customers are really needing. And and the business owner is either too busy or doesn't know how to do it, or is too sluggish in executing it, which takes away the entire advantage of being a small nimble business. Or we see that teams are not collaborating and the engagement is dropping, especially right now with this unbelievable pressure of homeschooling and of what people really need to do to survive in a time like this, is that the mental stress and the agony and the negativity is so intense that the teams are just not stepping up. They're barely existing, or they're barely sort of making it. So there's some issues in that. And and people are right now just completely and utterly stressed out about what's happening, how quick this is happening, and how quickly they're going to get out of it.
Yeah, and it's obvious that they're always, we've got a lot of hats, right, just to wear in the day to day, and knowing that you have to transition. I think you brought up a great point in that there's a lot going on, and I think sometimes we're just not even sure what's the real problem, right? Like, how do you recommend that they figure that out? Is there a strategy for saying, well, let me really evaluate what's my biggest issue right now, and how do I know what to go and attack?
That is an excellent, excellent point that you're making, because this is, I think, the number one issue that I see with all businesses.
Mhm.
So the way it typically works is something is not right. So the business owner, the leader, the founder, the CEO goes and says, we have a problem. And they look at the problem from their perspective on what's important to them. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's really going on in the business. That's their perception. Because if they knew what it was, they could fix it. But they don't know what it is, so they have to make an assumption. And the assumption is always looked at from their personal perspective, on their point of view. So, an example of that is very typical that people who are um, logical, and I'm a certified Myers-Briggs practitioner, so I bring a lot of personality assessments and personality types into my work because I need to know how I need to present the information. So somebody who's logical and strategic will always go and say, well, the strategy's not right. Or people are just too emotional. If people only would be less emotional, then we wouldn't have these problems. Then if somebody who is more a feeler kind of person, I'll go, oh my God, the people are so unhappy. What are we going to do? We need to make the people happy. And then maybe the strategy is just not there because this person is trying to make everybody happy and it's just not really working. So I developed a tool and it's called the 5-Star Success Blueprint because it allows me to diagnose with the person I speak to in a relatively short amount of time where the problem actually is. So it could be, and I have I actually have a graphic that I want to share with you to illustrate that in a moment, to show you exactly sort of how that works. But in essence, there's 3 pillars in a business that need to cohesively work together. One is the actual business strategy. That's the what, like what is it that we're doing? The second is the leader and career development of the leadership itself and the team leaders. And that is who is going to execute that
Mhm.
business strategy. And the third one is then workplace unification. And I call it workplace unification specifically because we have racial and social unrest. We have gender issues. We have age issues. We have, I think we like have every issue, every issue known to womankind and mankind that plays into why things don't work at work. So
Mhm.
workplace unification, and that is the how, because it's not the leader who does it. It's the leader who gets people to do it. So again, it's what, the strategy, who, the development of the people who are running the show, and the how, that's getting the teams to actually execute on what they need to be executing.
Perfect. I love that. And I think now more than ever, the diversity and equity conversation keeps coming up. And when you and I first chatted, we talked about that a little bit. And you had shared something with me that I hadn't really put into perspective before. And you shared this idea that when it comes even to gender issues, it's not just a male female thing. We attach, well, that's a woman, that's a man. But you shared with me, it's really the tendencies that the people have and the energies that they bring. And then it can, you can have a male leader who can, touch that kind of feminine quality and the energy and help solve a problem, and vice versa with the female. And I really thought that was interesting. I'd love if you could share just a little bit of that before we jump into the 5 keys.
Yes, so the idea, and this is really one of my core concepts. That's why I developed my this one program called the Women's Code. And I looked at when I was after I sold my business to a Bill Gates company, they asked me to come on as a senior director for global entertainment. So I'm running a Bill Gates company entertainment division. And I realized that what is going on inside an organization is systematically incredibly challenging because the system is not set up for anyone who is not fitting the mold. I mean, it's like the education system, it's all set up for one particular type of person, and then we just push everybody in that same funnel.
Right.
And people fail in alarming rates. But who would think adjusting the system would be their solution? So they rather adjust the people or
Right.
force the people to be something that they're not to make the system work, which doesn't work in the first place except for this narrow group. So I look at this and I'm going, that's just an I mean, how does this even make any sense to me? So I looked at how men do business, and there's a very clear code that men use. I call it the men's code. And this men's code is is ruled by power, strategy, and persuasion. So men always want to be in power. They always want to win. They love competition, most of them.
Mhm.
They deploy a strategy to get what they want and then persuade whoever they need to do to persuade. That's where the loyalty and all these other issues come in that women do not understand. To get the people,
Right.
to get, they persuade in a strategic way the people that they need to be persuaded to win, right?
Right.
So it's like a nice little system. So I teach that to organizations so that they actually understand how that works, because it's so innate for men they're not even aware of it, but it drives women crazy. And then women lead on compassion, uniqueness, and empowerment. So where men want to win, women want everyone to win. Where men seeking power, women want to empower everybody. Where men want to be persuasive, women want to recognize the uniqueness everybody's bringing to the table.
Mhm.
So if you look at it in that way, you go, well, all of these are kind of important. Well, that's the point. So if
Right.
we identify the men's code, we're clear about what the women's code is, and I can actually teach that and show you how that works, and then use, my new business code component and combine those two. It allows men to seamlessly switch from one to the other. It allows women to switch seamlessly from one to the other, or find team members, and this is all part of my workplace unification program. It allows them to come in and then say, oh, it changes everything in the team dynamic, because now I no longer have to persuade anybody. Now I can actually say who is in here who can handle that part of the people on the team, to help them recognize and address and understand what I'm trying to say. Because I'm limited, because again, everything I look through is my
Mhm.
way of thinking, what brought me here. But what brought me here is not going to get me to the next level.
Right. And I think that's so key. And I know when we talked about that last time, I thought about that for a couple of days. I'm like, it makes a ton of sense to me. At first I was like, I'm not sure I buy it. And then I'm like, no, I totally buy it. And I can recognize and see that in myself. So I appreciate that. And in just a few minutes, we'll probably talk about that a little more as Beate goes through her offer and kind of talks to you about some of the things that she's got going on. But before we do that, I'd love for you to take us through those 5 secrets and how people can kind of navigate through that.
Excellent. Yes. So this is at the core of everything that I do, and I prepared this literally, very much like everybody else. I had my own pivot, and I had to sit down and look at what we do and whether or not that's relevant. So the 5 star success blueprint is something that I've developed because I recognize that in business there is a cadence in how you build a business, and it's always the same blueprint. And within that blueprint, there are 5 steps, and I'm going to take you through these blueprints. So, first is always the idea. So, the idea is where you take that talent, you turn it into a business, you transform your passion into profits, and you really flesh out what is it that we're doing. The next thing that's followed by that is the offer. So, depending on what the idea is, that's products and services. I have programs that I teach where we have a unique way of how do we bundle things, how do we present this offer, how do we push this out there, how do we reverse engineer what we know our customers and clients
Mhm.
are really needing. And then you have to do what is only like my favorite thing in the world. You have to build a system.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's the German in me, Tara.
Right.
But I can't help it. It happens to me whenever I'm in a VIP day or I'm in a consulting agreement with somebody, and they say, well, I just wished I knew, I'm like, oh my God, I already know it. And my brain just spits it out almost involuntarily, because my job, my superpower is that I can take the pieces which are always there and arrange them in such a way that they fit in the system and they make a lot of
Yeah.
sense. So that's what my clients love about our work together.
And
So go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you, but at the same time, I want the listeners to really pay attention to a couple of these. You've already had the idea and you put yourself out there. Whether you have a product or a service or technology or whatever, you have an offer. But like that's the thing that's out there. And if you think that you can grow and be strategic without systems, I mean, we hear that all the time, right? When we work with growing companies, they're like, "Oh, I don't want so much process." That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about systems to run your business, and you can't get there without those. So I love that that you've identified that up front.
Yeah, and let me just spend another minute on that, because I think you're making a critical point. People a lot of times the myth here that we are covering, that you and I are here to dispel,
Mhm.
is that people go into business because they are unemployable, or they want to be their own boss, or they
Right.
find the systemic or structural issues so confining that they go, I don't want that. I'm going to be laptop lifestyle,
Yeah.
right? I'm going to just take my laptop. I'm going to sit on an island. I'm going to, be like Richard Branson in my hammock. I'm going to type for 2 hours a day, do some internet marketing stuff, and I'm going to be a super millionaire. Well, Richard Branson has a system. Mark Cuban has a system. They all have systems. And the misunderstanding about the system is that it is inflexible. So, very much like this blueprint, imagine that when you have children and you build a backyard, you put the swing in it, the sandbox, the vegetable garden, the football, the soccer goal. And when you say go play, you don't care what your kids do because you've created this environment.
Right.
So a good system is like that. It's not that I'm telling you go in the backyard, take the ball, play for 10 minutes, then move on to the sandbox, take the shovel and dig a hole and put it in the pile and turn it upside down and build a little castle. No, it's like, hey, here's how you build a good backyard that
Mhm.
allows you to play freely, and within that you can go. So that's really what I think um, you and I are referring to when we say
Right.
systems. It's the framework, it's a blueprint.
Exactly. Yep.
It's the architecture. So with this system in mind, so these three pieces are required for business development. So this is, now this is the first pillar of how I build businesses. So these things have to be in order. Sometimes businesses come to me and they have an idea and they have the offer, but they don't have the system,
Mhm.
or they have the offer and the system, but the idea is unclear. So again, you need a diagnostic tool, which this is, to
Right.
understand which way to go. So next we are going into teams. So now you need to make sure that the team kind of knows what's going on and the team is in place and can actually do that. Then we're going into the leader, because the leader has to be able to lead the team. And this is the second pillar. This is our workplace unification piece, where we now have to make sure that the system supports the people
Right.
that are run by the leader, or the leader leads the people who know how to utilize the system. So if the system doesn't support the team, or if the team doesn't like the system, you already got a conflict. So you might be running a great business, but if that piece is not in place, it's not going to go anywhere. I mean, how many times have you tried to put in new technology, a new system in a business that makes lives easier, and your entire team doesn't want to do it?
Right.
You
Yeah.
think it's a great idea,
Yeah.
but they hate it.
Yeah.
so so when you do that, again, it's not just about what you think, it's about on whether or not that actually works. And then the third pillar of this 5-star success blueprint is now the leadership component. And here, what are the three elements we need? We need the idea, because the leader needs to be always connected and passionate about what he is doing it for.
Mhm.
And without him being connected to the idea, or the team understanding what they're doing for it, so this is the Zappos idea, right?
Right.
So what Tony Hsieh did, he made sure that the idea delivering happiness was the mantra that everybody lived by, and that made the company so incredibly successful. And whether they sang to their customers or had the authority to send them complimentary pizza, is because the idea of what the business was so clearly defined.
Mhm.
So this is my 5-star success blueprint. And again, when you have this in place, you're going to be very quickly able to figure out where the issues are in your business and
Mhm.
how you need to go about them to solve them.
I love that, and I love the visual. And I think that what's important for this group to understand too is it can be a cycle, right? Like you can have this idea, the offer, the system, and then you get another brainchild or you see another market. You may very well have to cycle through that again, but if you've already got the blueprint, it's really easy to ramp quickly on those things.
Yes, and you're making an excellent point, Tara, because that is oftentimes what people forget. It's very much like being in a relationship, right? So you think like finding the person and falling in love and getting married is the thing, right? That's the
Right.
goal. And then you realize, well, that's kind of where the work really starts.
Right.
And then you go through a phase, and then you go, well, now I want to deepen my relationship, or my intimacy is not as rich as it used to be, or now the kids are, now I'm sounding like my father. Now I need to work on that. So you want to have this flexibility in this framework to say, what are we working on now?
Mhm.
Not are we done,
Right.
but what are we refining now? What do we need to readjust now? Are we still, is it everything still connected? It's a constant. It will never ever go away.
Right. I love that. Beate, we're getting close on time. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your offer and which I'm super excited about, and how to get in touch with you?
Yes, I'll be happy to. So I have two things that I brought for you. So the first one is, if what I said resonates with you and you have a business where you go, I could use a diagnostic tool like this, or I just don't know what it is, please do reach out. I have set aside 7 complimentary uncovery sessions that are valued at $500 a pop, just for your group, Tara, to make sure that they kind of can get the help that they need. And it in this uncovery session, I can diagnose sort of what's unconsciously sabotaging you to get to that next level, and what some of the things are that are needed to grow, build, and scale your business, and then what that thing is that is in your way
Mhm.
to get to that next level. And I'll leave that uncovery session with the first step to take action, to actually make sure that you're moving into the same, into the direction that you kind of want to go to.
Perfect. Love that. And then we've also got your bio information. They can reach you, and I know you've got a number of other programs and some white papers that I've downloaded and found really helpful. What's the best way to get those if they're looking for that?
Yes. So on that one, I have, and I'll just go through this for a quick minute.
Oh, perfect.
So part of this workplace unification, or the team building aspect of things is, and this ties back into the diversity portion that we talked about earlier, is I want you to look at your team like members of a writer's room. So in a writer's room in Hollywood, you have really great writers,
Mhm.
and they are experts in different things, but each one of them is responsible for a character development. Then several of them are responsible for the character relationship development. Then they are all responsible for the episode development, the series development, and the entire, and all the seasons development. So
Mhm.
it's a constant thing that's in motion. So when you have let's say a woman who is 50, could she be the development expert for a 15-year-old teenage boy? Or could somebody who is a 20-year-old single male writer be responsible for working on a relationship between, two adults that have been married for 20 years? So the idea of the writer's room is, and this is an idea I just want you to take with you, is to recognize that it's about putting the right person in the right place. So I just did a interview series with C-level executive and thought leaders, and I asked them, what is the future of leadership? And I just literally am just publishing this. And so if you're interested in what is the future of leadership, go to diversify.world and download my insights paper. It's absolutely free. And see if there may be an idea or two that might be helpful for you to grow and scale your business.
Perfect. Well, Beate, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. If you guys go out to Beate's bio page, we're going to have all of the ways that you can get in contact with her, and follow her on LinkedIn for sure. That's how I found her and instantly got hooked and became a rabid follower. So I'm so thankful that you were able to join us today and share your insights. And I look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you so much for having me, Tara.
Thank you.